It's Friday, the 16th of August, and welcome to the Edinburgh Fringe. Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is Edinburgh calling, the arts capital of the world. Means it's Fringe, it's August, and myself, Ewan Spence, a microphone, some news, and some interviews. With a bit of work, I will make that rhyme. It's taken me 20 years, I still haven't nailed it. Yes, the Edinburgh Fringe Show, delivering high-quality, BAFTA-nominated podcasts since 2005, and always with the help of Needfire on the bagpipes, guitars and drums. There you go. If you ever need any sort of music like that and you're in Texas, you're fine. Anybody else, you'll have to fly them in. Yes, welcome. It's the end of the second week of the Fringe. We're going into one of the big weekends, heading into the major awards. So it's the final chance for many to be seen. But one of the big awards that go through the entire Fringe is the Scotsman's Fringe First for Theatre, for productions that are showing for the first time at the Fringe. And they announced them throughout the 3 weeks, so they're sort of spread out. There's a chance for you to go and see them. So, for example, we saw a number of shows announced last week with the award. We're going to run through this week's awards as well, so it gives you something to put into your diary for the next week. And 2 weekends, and then the Monday afterwards as well. Those shows are Kamala, playing at Zoo Southside, a stage adaptation of Juan Riffo's novel Pedro Paramore, about the relationship between the dead and the living in Mexico. Next up at the space on Nadry Street is A Letter to Lyndon B. Johnson, or God, Whoever Reads This First. It's a physical theatre piece. It follows two patriotic friends, Ace and Grasshopper, as they try to become real boys, becoming real men in the US military. Mary Campbell has the story of the Living Stone at the Scottish Storytelling Centre. It's a story of the titular stone unearthed in Lismore and Campbell's meditation on the stone. Summer Hall has Son of a Bitch. What happens when a mum goes viral for calling her 4-year-old son a see you next Tuesday as they get off an airplane? Then we have VL at the Roundabout Summer Hall venue, a female perspective of toxic masculinity based in a Scottish secondary school. And finally for this week, Weather Girl, which is also playing at Summer Hall, a television weather girl in Central California who finds herself reporting on ever-intensifying wildfires in the home state she loves. We will have a link back to the Scotsman's Awards page, which has all of those shows linked to their reviews and for the tickets, as well as everything that was announced in week one. There will be another round of Fringe Firsts next Friday, which will give you the last 3 or 4 days of the Fringe to go through and see them. Okay, today's interview is with Rachel Kaly, who is over from the US to bring their debut hour to the Fringe. Hospital Hour is a look at the many appointments and visits into the American healthcare system that Kaly took for psychological treatments. We also talk about what the Fringe means, both in general Fringe theatre and the Edinburgh Fringe specifically. How do you know when an hour is ready for the Fringe? And how does the show change throughout the month? This is Rachel Kaly. Join me now on the Edinburgh Fringe Show, another transatlantic debut at the Fringe. Rachel Kaly joins me. Hello, Rachel.
Hello.
Welcome to our little tiny off Broadway city, which it feels like sometimes. We have so many Americans coming over, especially from New York.
Really?
Yeah. When I say Edinburgh Fringe to you, before you started planning all of this, what did the Fringe mean to you?
Before I started planning all of it, I mean, it's funny because there are other like festivals called Fringe in the world. And so I actually did like the New York Fringe Festival in 2013, and I was like, okay, that's probably the last one I'll do. Like that's probably enough. But over the years, like I've seen comics go over there, and it just like it seems so fun and crazy and like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Um, so, I feel like that's why I'm going. But do you mean the word fringe also?
It was one of those delightful open-ended questions.
Uh-huh.
We're going down to Fringe as an event then. So when did you make the sort of switch in your head then from, oh, that looks like it could be a fun adventure, to let's make this adventure happen?
Yeah, I have been doing this show called Hospital Hour. I started doing it January of 2023, just like I kind of improvised my way through it for a couple months and then started solidifying what it was like about a year ago. And a year ago felt like too soon to do the Fringe, but I did have a lot of friends who were going, especially during the strike over here.
It's been the writer's
So
strike.
yeah, the writers and actors strike. Yeah. So it was like everyone was going because that was a lot of what was available to do, and it felt like something to do. Um, but my show wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. And so I was just like, okay, I'll do it next year. And I kind of locked into that and didn't ask any more questions about it. And it's been a very, there's a lot of moving parts. It's pretty crazy. Like I'm used to touring in America, but it's such a different ball game, especially when it's like such a concentrated amount of time in one place. And it's like, there are like what 3,000 shows or something. I feel like that's crazy. And it's like we're all trying to get people to come to our shows, and then we want to see everyone else's show, and it's a lot.
Was there a moment where you thought, nope, I've changed my mind? Let's not. I can't hope.
Never changed my mind, but it is it's a crazy endeavor as a first timer. And so I feel like there are times where I have to be like, is this worth it? And then I just kind of think about like, I did some shows over in the UK in March, and I met some really just like great comics. And I actually was in Edinburgh, and even within Edinburgh, it was like, I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm glad I got to see what comedy is like in these spaces. And I'm like really looking forward to seeing international comedy. Like I've really never had that opportunity before. And also just thinking about again, like the show I've been doing, like I think it'll be in its best shape at the end of this. There's kind of nothing like I've probably done the show about 30 times over the last year and a half, but to do it, basically 30 times in 30 days is completely different.
How much have you changed the show knowing it's now going to an international audience? So you said you played it like 30 times there. Some of that will be when you were over here in the UK and Scotland, but some of that will be, but the majority of that will be in America, presumably.
Yeah. I think honestly, I'm working with some producers, and I ran it by them, and they were like, maybe you should change this, but like not much. And then when I did it in London and Edinburgh, like it all translated. So I feel like the first night or two I might like have to see, and then if I need to change things. But the references I make are pretty known references. Like it's nothing so obscure. I think like I think you guys know that like because my show's about going to the hospital so much and like doctors, like I think you guys know how bad our healthcare system is. So I'm like, hopefully I don't have to. Hopefully people are going into the show knowing that. Um, but otherwise, I don't know.
So, hospital hour, healthcare, you've mentioned there as well, which starts to give our listeners an idea of the show. But it's an intensely personal show.
The hook is kind of like I've been to the hospital like 200, 300 times, and it's been for like a lot of different programs, like mental health programs where you're supposed to go every day. I mean, I've probably been more than that. I just think people won't believe me, honestly, if I say that I've been more than that. Um, but it's a show about like my, I guess, struggle, but even that feels, I don't know. I mean, it's been a struggle, but I'm like, I don't know if that's the word I want to use, but with mental health, and like my own mental illnesses. And I kind of tell my life story through the lens of like what made me go to the hospital so many times. And yeah, I talk about my family and just like stuff that I've been through. But it's a lot of like personal anecdotes. And I feel like people often leave the show feeling like they really know me. And a lot of times also like come up to me after and kind of like share their own experiences. And, I think it's a vulnerable show.
Why make that decision to put so much out there?
It's a good question. And sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? But it's kind of just what I've always done. Um, I think had a very interesting life and I'm like very preoccupied with things that have happened to me. And so that's like where a lot of my creative energy goes. And I think I try to keep certain things private about myself. And it's a lot of talking about things that have happened to me and not things that are currently happening to me, which I think is like a way that I maintain my sanity a little bit. But a lot of my projects are very personal and like pull from things that have happened to me. And I think that's just the type of comic I am. And I also think that, mental illness is talked about a lot in comedy, but like not with a ton of specificity. And I think I'm trying to kind of like dig in to the specifics of like, well, this is what mental illness is for me. This is what it's made me do. Isn't that funny?
Is there any point during the preview shows and working through the material where you realise you've went too far with the material?
Not really. I feel like when it comes to myself, I can't really go too far. I mean, certainly I could cross a line in terms of like what I'm comfortable with sharing, but I'm pretty good at like calibrating that before I do any material. Um, but in terms of like subject matter or like kind of any other barometer, like I really don't think I've gone too far.
What about the audience reaction? You said that a lot of people come up to you after the show.
Hmm.
What is the experience for you watching the audience watch this show like? Because these shows, you can see a lot of emotion in an audience's face as they go through one of these hours.
There are some moments where I reveal stuff and there are like gasps and people say like, oh no, or whatever. And I feel like every moment I truly tried to punctuate it with a joke. So I'm just hoping that people are laughing. And I actually think the combination of like shock and comedy like makes for bigger laughs a lot of the time in this show. Um, but it's like, I don't know. It's like, I kind of like, in some ways, I guess it's like validating. It's like, yeah, my life has been crazy and people are responding to that, but I don't really care about that. I think like why I'm telling the stuff I'm telling is because I think it's funny. And so if people laugh, that's kind of all I care about. And people laugh. I've really tried to put a joke with every thought. Like it's a very joke heavy show. It's like material that is dark, but it's always like comedy first.
Does that make it? I mean, there's a couple of ways that as a performer you can do that. Some people choose to make it sort of awkward and cringe, and others make it a little bit more life affirming. It sounds like you're aiming towards the latter.
I don't know if people leave the show feeling good. Like I don't know if it's life affirming, but it's not cringe or awkward. Like I'm kind of like we're all in this together and like you're gonna laugh and if you don't laugh, you're not gonna have fun. Like, it's like I'm doing it at my expense. And so I'm doubling down a lot. And I think a lot of the times I'm like, this crazy thing happened to me and here's a joke about that. And the joke is like at my expense. Like, I think I'm like kind of prodding the audience to like laugh with and at me. So I guess that's positive. Like, I guess it's like, yeah, I'm on the other side of what's happened, but I don't life affirming about this show is just funny to me.
What about life affirming to you then? You're looking back at a lot of your life. You're putting it into both its historical context and both a context of who you are today. What's this show done for you?
I think it's like helped. A lot of this material is stuff that I've been trying to work out creatively for years. And either in like my regular stand-up or in scripts that I write or whatever. And I think a lot of this is just the stuff that I couldn't quite fit anywhere else. So it's been fun creatively to finally find an outlet for that material. I think like, I've gotten a lot of positive responses from the show. I think it's like helped my career, which is very nice. And I feel like it is like there is something nice about people seeing this and like knowing more about me, or like I don't have to explain myself sometimes. It's like people like, oh yeah, I saw Hospital Hour. I get it, and I'm like, okay, great. That's another conversation I don't have to have or whatever. Like, I think it gives people context a little bit, sometimes too much. I think sometimes people are like, oh, I know Rachel. And I'm like, well, it's still a show. And like, it's still kind of a character. And there's like, there's theatrics behind it and whatever. But yeah.
So the show itself, tell us where we can see it at Edinburgh.
It is going to be at the Pleasance Courtyard in Bunker 2 at 6:55 p.m.
And we will have a link back to the ticket office back at our website, edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com. That'll take you right in, be able to buy the tickets. Show runs right through until the 25th. Outside of Edinburgh, Rachel, people can find more about you online where?
I have a website, rachelkaly.com. Pretty much if you Google me, you will find me. I'm around.
And I'll link back to the website there as well. Rachel, fascinating show. Enjoy your time at Edinburgh.
Thank you so much.
Rachel Kaly there with Hospital Hour, plays at Pleasance Courtyard, 18:55 every night through until the 25th. As always, links back to the Ed Fringe ticket office at our website and also to Rachel Kaly's websites as well. Well, it is the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There are big nights in terms of ticketing, especially Friday, Saturday. Sunday, not everybody plays, so you have a chance just to cut a little bit more through if you are a performer, but it's sold out shows. It's the excitement of the Fringe, and we try and capture just a little bit of that here in the show. So thanks very much. The usual, if you're enjoying it here, link, like, love, share, subscribe is always welcome. It helps more people find us, especially if you can leave a star rating on your favourite podcast app, client or directory. But for now, I'll say ta-ra, and I'll catch you at the Fringe or beyond. You've been listening to the Edinburgh Fringe Show, hosted by Ewan Spence, produced by Spence Media and Radio 6 International. Listen to more at edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com.